Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be presenting yet again at Discoveries. I'd like to thank Doc Coleman first for the invitation, and the whole team of Discoveries who are doing a greater job every year of putting this event together. And I'll be talking about Capitan Mining. It's nice to do it every year too, because it's like an annual check on the company. We've been doing this with Discovery since we started this company, so it's great to be here. As always, the disclaimer, as you know and as you've seen with other companies, we'll be making some forward-looking comments, so expect to see those. And actually, the story of Capitan started, has a special place in Discoveries because it all started back in 2018 at the Discoveries conference when I started chatting with John-Mark Stouty, who's right here. It's his birthday today, by the way, so congratulate him later. Give him a big applause, please. He's very modest and doesn't like to say, but it's his birthday today. I think he's 40-something. So it all started at Discoveries 2018, and so it's been kind of a tradition to be doing this check since 2020 that we started the company. So we're still a fairly young company. We've only been around since 2020. And what I want to do today, before getting into what Capitan is and what we've done and how we've grown the company, is to frame it in some sort of a recipe for success. No matter what industry you may be in, what line of work, I think all these elements work for whatever company, whatever industry you're in, whether you're a Formula One racing company, your Apple computer, it doesn't matter. You need these four elements to make things work. There's the moment, there's the when, and obviously you have to adjust your strategies depending on the moment. We've heard some really interesting presentations through Discovery, so it's good to be last today because I can take some elements from those talks. But we've heard John Mark doing some elements of how investment has been changing for exploration. Ingeniero Martinez recently talking about copper and the trends in copper. We have to take all of that into account to decide what type of work and what kind of investments we're going to do. And in the case of a junior exploration company, when to enter the market. You obviously need a team. The people is important. If you don't have a good team, you're not going to be able to do things. You need the place, the where and the what. In the case of an exploration company, it's obviously partly geography, in our case, Mexico. But you're going to have to choose a geography. Ingeniero Martinez was showing us how the vast majority of copper projects are located in Latin America. So if you're looking for copper, you'll want to be there. So you're going to have to choose where to work and what to look for. And in our case, that's silver and gold. And then you need the strategy. Then that's the how you're going to make all those elements work into a success. And there's the strategy planning, and then there's the execution as well, and the team is really important then. So this is to frame the presentation. I'm going to try to go through all of these points and hopefully convince you that we're doing all of this right in Capitan. Before I get into the company, let me start with the environment. And there's, again, already been some great talks on these points, and my graphs are not nearly as updated and as good as the previous ones that we've seen today. But I think they get the point across. The price of gold chart here, obviously we know it's cyclical, it has ups and downs. Depending on how long you've been working in this industry, you may have entered the industry at different points through this graph, or maybe way back before this. This starts in 2000. That's where I got into this when I graduated school, and there was no work anywhere. There was nothing to do back in those times. But right soon after that, we had one of the biggest bull markets that we've seen in recent history. And that created a lot of the mines that we're still seeing today operating. Some of those, you may recognize which mines, I'm talking about here by the initials. But take, for example, El Sausal. when El Sausal started production, this is not even when they started exploration. This is when they started production with the green triangle here. And in the case of Sausal, when it ended the production, which was in 2014. Chanate, for example, as well, over in 2007, and then ended production recently in 2018. So what we're seeing is that, that roughly 10 to 15 year life of mine from all of these projects, and obviously there's a lot more here that are not in the graph, but the idea is to show you just how they were created and now they're being depleted. And what we have in Sonora, if you think about it, for the last 10 years or so, what we've been having is the mine closures, or many of the mines that we have today with a short life of mine. And we've heard today as well that exploration hasn't been doing all that well. This is actually, Ingeniero Martinez had a much updated graph than this. This is a 2017 graph on exploration budgets, but I think it shows the point. From 2012, they just dove down completely. And if we take Camimex's graph for Mexico only, we see that tendency continues yet to this day. So what we know is, even though we've had some good prices recently, as some of the previous presentations today have said, exploration budgets, exploration expenditure has been down. And we haven't seen nearly anything like the previous cycle we recently had, which started roughly in 2002, 2003 or so. So that talks about the moment. We also heard in a couple talks back that demand for all these metals is going to increase. We know that the mines that we produced during last cycle are shutting down. The ones that are going to continue are the ones that have extremely long mine life, like Cananea, Herradura. Those are going to continue going a little further. But the other mines that are smaller, medium-sized, we're going to see them close pretty soon unless we invest in exploration heavily. So what this is telling us about the moment is that we have the demand, the mines are depleting, we don't have the exploration expenditure. This creates a lot of demand for quality exploration projects. Do we have them? I think we're getting there. So Capitan Mining is, we'd like to say that it's a Mexican exploration company, because it is, but it trades in the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture, and it may have a lot of Canadian investors, but we also have Mexican investors in it. We hope to have more sometime very soon. But at its core, it's a Mexican company. And another trend that I think you'll see for juniors working in Mexico is that we're having more and more Mexicans working in these companies and at the C-level suite. And we chose the name for the company, and I'll have to give it to John Mark here as well. He suggested the name. I love the name, one, because it's in Spanish, and obviously we wanted something that was in Spanish for a company working in Mexico. But also Capitan, transmits leadership, discipline, teamwork, and we wanted to have that within our philosophy. Our project recently renamed Cruz de Plata, also Spanish name, Plata because of the silver, obviously, which is now our main focus. The Cruz part, the cross, it's both because it reminds you of different things, the cross of the Catholic Church, the cross, the X that marks the spot to where the treasure is hidden, etc. And obviously, too, and very specifically for our project, there's a crossing of structures here that I'll talk about in a moment. So the name really seemed really appropriate to us for the project. So we're young. We started trading in the TSXV in September 2020. My first presentation was in November 2020 in person at Discoveries in Guadalajara. And then, again, we've been doing that annually since then. It's located in northern Durango. It's a silver and gold project. We have a team with a lot of experience. at an attractive valuation. I think we'll demonstrate that as well. And we could say that although it has some elements of advanced exploration, because there's already a resource there, there's drilling, we're also at the discovery phase. There's a lot to be done, and we have found some things that are really, really interesting and that we believe very valuable, but still early in the discovery process. So, we've talked about the moment, and I gave you an introduction to the company. The people part of the company, very important. This is a team that we've been putting together for some years now. Here's Oscar Jimenez. I think if you want to know anything about the geology here, here's Oscar. I think Yolanda Chaires is around. There she is. But this is a team that over a number of companies we've been putting together, growing, and to the point that we have the same exploration team that we had back in Argonaut Gold. And a team that not only has the technical capabilities, but also the ability to do the government community relations, which today we believe are key to advancing projects. I think Roman Olguinus is also around. I saw him earlier. And myself as CEO of the company leading this effort, one of now more and more Mexican CEOs of Canadian companies, which I'm happy to see. And of course, it'll take us a long time to go through all of these profiles, but this is a great team with the experience in projects from the early discovery point all the way into production and even ore control. So we've seen a wide range of things. We have a number of projects that we have worked on and grown and de-risked. So we have the experience there to back up the company. And our board, it's a small board still. It will be growing hopefully soon, but it's a board that is currently 2/3 Mexican, and maybe a little more because I know John Mark's grandfather was Mexican. And he's been working in Mexico since the 80s, so he's more Mexican now than American or Canadian. Again, a team that has seen everything from exploration at the early stage all the way to mining and operations on our board as well. So that's the people part, and we believe we have a great team that has done it before, that has the portfolio, and that recognizes the value and the opportunity that we have at Cruz de Plata. The project is located in northern central Durango. It's actually closer to Torreon to the east than it is to Durango City to the south. Not far from there is also Mapimí. We're surrounded by other successful stories, both in exploration and operations. Myself and the team worked not very far from here, just a little over an hour drive south at El Castillo and San Agustin, where it's also important to say that the gold part of our project is very similar to what we see there at Castillo and San Agustin. Great location because it's also easy to get there. We're down in the flats, a couple access from north and south. So those are some things that you really want to see in a mining project when you get there and when you're developing one. Now getting into, as I said, I do this every year at Discovery, so what's different and what has changed from last year, and why do we believe we have the right place and the right geology here to work with, is that, for one, we've been working mostly, I think in my previous updates, they have all been about the gold. And we'll see more detail of it later, but it's a disseminated low-grade deposit right at surface here, that it's the Capitan Hill. More recently, because of a discovery that we did on a drill hole here, hole 29, that went underneath Capitan, we discovered another vein of silver right there underneath the gold deposit. And that opened up the potential for silver. We already knew it. We're actually going to see a slide of what had already been found and intersected there. And this used to be historical mines as well, right here in number 1 and number 5. But what this particular hole did was open up the potential for scale. It told us the vertical continuity was there and the potential to find additional veins as well. So what we have here in the numbers are all the silver targets. from 1 to 8. We don't own this one in the middle, but we have the rest of the property. And there's at least a couple styles of mineralization that we see there, from the polymetallic Jesus Maria El Refugio trend, silver, lead, zinc, gold, to the Gully Fault zone, which is lower in the base metal. It's actually more of a silver gold zone, which is also the case for San Rafael. But long story short, we have a trend that extends for at least about 3 kilometers with multiple targets, and a number of them have gotten drilling, sampling, and have been identified at a pretty good level. This is a view of the Jesus Maria mine. There's part of the team here, and this piece of core right here, that's one of the highest grade samples that we have, part of this 0.9 meter interval of 3.4 kilos of silver, with a little bit of gold and 10% lead plus zinc. That's one of the styles of mineralization. The other one here, more in the Gully Fault zone. You can see that these intervals here form wide zones. We have 70.8 meters of goes to 150 grams per ton silver and a little bit of gold, but that includes some high-grade intercepts there, like 7.15 meters of just under a kilo silver with a gram gold. So that's the lower base metal part of the deposit with particularly higher gold than the rest of the zone. And we're gonna see the difference between those two in a moment. But what we're seeing here is more of the polymetallic part of the deposit. And so that photo we were just looking at, that's along the Jesus Maria vein right here to the north of Capitan Hill, which is where we have the disseminated part of the deposit. I don't know if Ton Albinson's still around, but he did a fluid inclusion study early on in this project. The main findings was that over here at Capitan we had the highest part of the system, the lower temperature part of the system, and over here where we had the deeper part. We believe there might be a target in between, perhaps related to this system we see with the gold-silver structures that might be actually feeding into the Capitan Gold Zone. We believe they might actually be a little younger too than what we're seeing at the Jesus Maria zone. But some of the things that we've been doing again is extending that gold mineralization, and more recently now starting to extend the Jesus Maria vein at depth and on strike. And hole 29 with the mineralization that it got. Unfortunately, it's a hole that bottom in mineralization. We couldn't continue exploring that zone, but that proved that we can have additional vertical continuity and additional veins there to be found still. Besides these feeder zones too, potentially there could be some skarn mineralization. That we see skarn alteration on surface in part of the drilling as well. So maybe skarn is something to be found as well. If we go along the Jesus Maria vein, which is that polymetallic vein again, where we have the photo of the underground workings, do a long section, grade times width. This is what we get with our current drilling today. It extends for about 800 meters of strike length. This is an inclined long section, so we're looking at about 250 maybe meters to 300 actually, because we press released these holes down in here, and what's happening is that this area, this more favorable area of over 2,000 is actually expanding here at depth as well. We've yet to release these results, but again, they're confirming that the continuity is good. This is a vein zone that is not very narrow. These veins actually, at the bottom, even we get to see them up to 20 meters in true width. I'd say they probably be averaging 10 meters in width, so the continuity is actually very strong, both on surface and down dip. Those two orange lines that you see crossing there, that's the Gully Fault zone. And that's, before we move on to the next slide, just want to highlight it here, and that's the gold-silver or silver-gold structure. And here on the map, we would see it crossing at an angle to the Jesus Maria zone, dipping steeply to the northwest. And taking a 3D view of that Gully Fault zone and how it intersects Jesus Maria, here shown in red, the Jesus Maria zone, and in orange, the Gully Fault zone with the silver. Gold mineralization, again, see how we have wide zones of mineralization we have actually chased these up to surface all the way with some trenching that we've done here on the side of the hill. The Capitan gold deposit is located all through here, through this hill. And some of the higher grade zones in Capitan are located here, which could be an indication that these structures are actually working as feeder zones to the Capitan Hill. But it's a zone that we are just starting to understand a little better. It doesn't have a lot of strike length identified yet. We need to come back and rethink how we drill this specific target, as we have been focusing mostly on extending the Jesus Maria vein on strike. And hard to read here, but if you have the time and if you're interested, you can go to our website and download this, our corporate presentation, and you'll see that what we have are some wide zones with lower grade and with some higher grade, more narrow zones in there. On the northeast part of our property, right after that, the property we don't own is the San Rafael zone. It has a few historical mines in it as well, and you can see that there have been at least 4 very distinctly defined veins in this area that have been mapped and sampled and drilled to some extent. There are 5 drill holes here by previous operators that all of them intersected mineralization. Perhaps not as high grade as we have found over on the Gully Fault or Jesus Maria zone, but it's still very early days and a very promising target that we need to continue evaluating and understanding, and to see where exactly this fits into the whole model and the system, because it's a little different than Jesus Maria, as we see less base metals, less arsenic in this part of the deposit. So I think we were having some issues because we started the company with the gold, and for over a year we were drilling the gold system, and I think most people would relate us to that gold mineralization, and we just pivoted to the silver, and we were having some issues showing the scale of what we have already found at the Jesus Maria vein. So what we did is try to compare our long section to another example that is very well known today. This is one of the hot stories today, Vizsla Silver now, and you can see that we try to keep this at the same scale and with the same color scheme on grade times width. And when you look at what Vizsla had back in October, they've obviously grown much more than this today, but the very start, the very first long section of the Napoleon vein was roughly a similar size to the main zone we have within Jesus Maria. But they were valued at over 100 million market cap at that point. They had a better market. We came much later into this with the silver. And the other difference is they have put much more drilling than we have. And this area has only 8,000 meters of drilling to date, which is not a whole lot. Later on, and this is still not where they are today, they've grown this further, but we put this particular stage of their long section there, which was September 2021, because we believe that's closer to where we are today. And obviously by this point, Vizsla was over around 300 million market cap. We are sitting right now at $10 million market cap in Capitan. But we believe with an opportunity that is worth much, much more. So talking about also the right moments to be in a certain story and to invest, we believe that we are making our case for saying that we have a lot of room to grow. If we zoom out a little bit more, we were looking at a long section that was right just along here in the Jesus Maria zone. But if we look at the whole thing, including San Rafael, there's a potential 2.5 kilometer trend here that we could be able to complete. Again, we don't own that middle piece there, but even without that, I think that the potential for scale is very clearly shown. And again, comparing it to Vizsla, this is Vizsla's long section on December 16, 2021. I think it's roughly about where it is today, and that was 1.9 kilometers. So in terms of strike length, in terms of the potential for scale. And when we look at the type of system too, we have some characteristics of intermediate sulfidation here that we believe are going to give it a lot of scale when we explore this. And again, let's not forget that we also have that disseminated gold deposit right next to these high-grade silver veins. So we have multiple targets, a strong on-strike continuity. We know that these veins continue deep. So really what this needs is it's a lot of drilling, and we're hoping to complete that soon. This slide used to be way at the front of our presentation before. We have now moved it back significantly because we believe it doesn't reflect the real potential for the project. So this resource is actually not bad at all. It's a really good starting point. That's 305,000 ounces of gold. It's an inferred resource at 0.46 grams per ton gold, which is very similar to what we see at El Castillo and San Agustin. The silver resource is 15.2 million ounces of silver at a 62.3 gram per ton average grade. This is where we believe we have to be very careful, because I was showing you some really nice, very high grades right over here. And when you look at that average grade, you go, well, that's not really that high. The thing is that, and as you can see here with the cones, this resource was put together as an open pitable resource, and it considers a much wider zone of alteration and much lower, it has a lower cutoff grade than you would do for the high-grade veins. In addition, this was with only 3,000 meters of drilling. They were not really able to define the veins and their continuity and to do, it would have been a much smaller resource on a high grade, but what we recognize here is that the potential for a high-grade resource was there, and that was not reflected in the original resource. So, you know, part of our decision too to start with the gold was that in our experience, we had worked with San Agustin and El Castillo with very similar grades, a lot of similarities in the mineralization style. And while it's not our main focus today, it's still a very valuable part of our story. Right over here, this is the point at which we got the project. You can see that most of the drilling is very close to surface. They're on the up-dip component of the system. There's only a few drill holes that went a little deeper. And that was just under 7,000 meters of drilling, which again is not a whole lot. We added in the first year, 18 months of operation, an additional 12,000 meters of drilling to grow this on strike and down dip. And basically the footprint of the deposit has been doubled, both on strike and down dip. What is hard to evaluate with this orientation of this 3D view is the thickness of the zone. And that's important too, because this drilling has also identified that the thickness is quite continuous, and there is a lot of mineralization there that makes this a really interesting, potentially open pitable deposit. And that is the strong continuity that the mineralization has in all dimensions. Down dip, you can see that it's a very tabular body. Down the hole, the mineralization is also very continuous. Oxidation is deep. We're talking as much as over 200 meters of vertical oxidation here. The topography is also working in our favor. There's another zone here, and this is a lower grade. We call this the hanging wall zone. But it's still within, you know, the cutoff grades that are being mined today at El Castillo and San Agustin, and that has the potential to really help us lower that strip ratio there. So yeah, we really like the gold, the disseminated gold story, but we're now pivoting to the silver story in part because of this specific drill hole here, hole 29, which, you know, had an interesting intercept there, as much as 3 meters of 103 grams per ton silver, 0.26 gold, some lead and zinc. Is not so much the grade that drill hole cut, but the style of mineralization, which is the same style of mineralization that we're seeing 350 meters to the north. That is really interesting, because that's telling us that could be extending further at depth, and that there are potentially additional veins that could be found underneath the gold deposit, which we obviously can't look underneath unless we drill holes. and that was the case with this particular hole. Again, unfortunately, that hole bottomed in mineralization just due to technical difficulties, but it opens up the potential for all of this zone underneath the gold system. And it's interesting too because it might be a more complete cross-section than we see over here to the north. So that's part of what we're seeing in the gold. We're still very excited about it, but again, we have pivoted more to the silver where we like the high-grade component and potential there of the silver. Getting now away from the technical part and just into the capital markets part of it, it's also important to keep a strong share structure. It's obviously much harder these days with low markets. If our story was $1, this number here would be much lower, obviously. Difficult times. But I think all in all, with the challenging market that we have, we've made a good job to keep these number of shares issued here a low number. Even our fully diluted is significantly low, particularly compared to what we've been able to do with those funds. With that money that we've raised, we believe that we have created a lot of value and not diluted our shareholders significantly. But this slide, I think, also shows the opportunity with our current market cap at only 10 million. We have a lot of room to grow. When you compare, I was showing you the comparison with Vizsla. We're working on a number of other comparisons to show how the value for this is much greater. We believe that, if you take into consideration the resource that I showed, we're starting with 300,000 ounces of gold and 15 million ounces of silver. I don't think it's considering the whole scale of the project, that is too crazy to think about 1 million ounces open pittable potential with all the different targets, and maybe not too far from 100 million ounces of silver in the two different targets. I don't know if Oscar will agree with me, but that's what I think. And when you compare us, just look at that share structure and what we have in terms of resources. Here, our resources have been converted to a silver equivalent, so that would be a roughly 39 million ounces silver equivalent if we convert the gold into silver. Our share structure, which is considerably lower than the competition. And when you look at where we are here, well, we're not that far. There are some stories that are purely exploration but no resources yet. And you look at those market caps, we still have a lot of growth to do, and we believe that the moment is now. And I was talking about the moment earlier, and I want to come back to this for a moment because as a final reflection here, when we started this company in 2020, it took us about a year to do the whole process. So I left Argonaut Gold in 2019 to do this because I felt that the moment was right. As we discussed at the beginning of this presentation and a number of other past presentations today and in the past 3 days, exploration budgets have been down, exploration expenditure in general. We're only, I think, starting to see some discoveries in recent months, in the last year perhaps, that are starting to be significant. So the opportunity to find a quality project is there. And I got to a point in which I was more afraid to miss the opportunity than to take the opportunity and fail. And I think now, I'm looking back on it, I'm really happy I made that choice because, I think while we may have not timed it particularly right with the market, I think we're building a very high quality project here that is going to definitely be re-rated in coming months. Where are we going to go with this? What have we done then, and where are we going to go? Well, we've already done the Capitan Hill Gold. Now we're going to pivot into the silver and start expanding that and showing the potential for scale on the high-grade structures, as well as on both the Jesus Maria and the San Rafael zone to find additional veins. Advance the rest of the property. We have 2,300 hectares there to explore. We're currently royalty-free, which is great, or contracted to be royalty-free, which adds further value to our project. And yes, we will be doing, this is important to Discoveries, we are looking for additional opportunities for Capitan in terms of projects. So if you have them, please let us know, and we will evaluate them to see if they're a good fit for our company. But just to close here, again, thank you, Doug. This has been a great event. It's great to close, to be the closing talk, and to talk about what we believe is going to be one of the companies and the projects to be looking at in the coming months and years. We're really proud of what we have achieved, and we're always really proud to be doing our annual check right here at Discovery. So thank you very much, Doc. Thank you, everybody, for your attention and for sticking around until the end.
Well, that concludes Discoveries 2022. I hope you enjoyed the talks and the conference and the camaraderie, the networking. I hope that you've developed some good business contacts for the future. And we're looking forward to seeing the results of this conference for years going forward. And just to let you know, BILSA is sponsoring an after-conference party at the BILSA installations over in Quinta Amelia. It's a little difficult for me to give you the exact address right here, but if you would like to pass by the BILSA booth, they would be happy to give you instructions on how to arrive. But it'll be a nice informal get-together in a Sonoran ranch-style atmosphere. Under the mesquite trees, you'll have a carne asada and some cold beer and some good talk and good company. And I hope that all of you will join us there. And thank you to everybody for coming to the Discoveries Conference, and we hope to see you again next year.